If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free, and you guessed it, it's free. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and many more. It's everything you need to make a podcast in just one place. So download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Pieces of a Nation. Welcome back, Pieces of a Nation listeners. Thank you so much for coming back. This is a podcast that makes you feel stuff. My name is Ricky Chu. Follow us on Instagram at Pieces of a Nation. And while you're at it, please subscribe, rate, and review our show. It's on all your podcast platforms. It would really help us out. Also, if you'd like to, please support us on Patreon. It's only $5 a month. Just go to patreon.com, www.patreon.com/Pieces of a Nation. Today, I'd like to introduce a young lady who's a virtual assistant and a speaker who spends a lot of her time helping others succeed in their businesses. Sarah Fletcher, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. How's your day going?
It's going really well here. It's a very not pretty day here where I'm based. So I've been locked in the office getting a lot of work done.
Where are you based?
So I'm based out of St. Louis, Missouri, and it is very much springtime here. So it's rainy and cloudy. So
Oh, wow. Okay, got it. Yeah, and plus Missouri is a little muggy too at the same time, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely. It's spared us a little bit this year, but it's coming. So I'm bracing for that.
That's excellent. Well, let's jump straight into it. So essentially, you are a virtual assistant, which is pretty amazing, especially during these days. Being a virtual assistant, doing things remotely, is pretty prime, I would expect. And just give us a little bit about what exactly you do, because I know you're a creator of the Virtual Desk Roundtable, right?
Yes.
And kind of give us an idea of what all that stuff is and what you do exactly.
Yeah. So what I do is I offer basically the same services that an office manager or an administrative assistant, bookkeeper, people along those lines. I offer those same services. The only difference is that I offer it virtually. So I'm not in your office. I'm not dedicated just for you. So you can choose to work with me for a certain amount of hours a month. You can have me just come on board to work on a certain project. That was kind of where all of those items were founded in, kind of where I got my start. And then from there, I launched a podcast. It's very new, but it's just covering business topics, everything from mindset to marketing, sales, and pretty much anything in between. I also have a Facebook group where we just discuss business issues that arise. It's really just the whole idea behind Virtual Desk is to be a community where business owners of all sizes can get together and just discuss life, whether it's tips and tricks, help with different issues that they come into, or really just chatting back and forth for encouragement.
Yeah. So what have you experienced thus far, and what have you noticed from other people? I mean, we talk about business mindset, right? In order to run a business, you've got to be, not just focused, but also detail oriented, and you've got to have a certain drive to move forward. What are some of the issues that you've gone through, and some of the issues that you've noticed that other people have given you, and how do you overcome those and help other people at the same time while helping yourself?
Definitely. So I think one of the biggest things I see and that I help people with is just getting over the hurdle of taking that first step. So a lot of people have an idea. They want to do a side business. They want to do a full-time business, but they just don't know where to start. So they never do. They just keep saying, one day I'm going to do this. We're going to do this. And then it never happens. So it's also one of my favorite things to do is just sitting down with someone and helping them roadmap through all of those mindset set ideas that they have and helping them getting it on to get it on paper. Because I think that's the biggest step. Once you have it on paper, you can break it down into true steps that you can follow to actually make that goal happen. And I think until you do that and until you kind of wade through all of these thoughts that come with an idea like that, you have a really hard time actually starting and taking those steps. So that's a big one that I see, is just helping people get those ideas out of their mind on paper so we can figure out how to make it a reality.
So you're sort of talking about like a mind map, right?
Yeah,
When you
yeah,
say
mind map.
roadmap, mind map. So I'm definitely familiar with the mind map, but for me, I find it a little challenging to make a mind map for myself. I have a whole different system of creating like steps and stuff like that. But just for myself and the listeners, let's say I came to you to figure out, like, ask you, help me brainstorm this, help me create a mind map. What's the most easiest and most general way you can help a person like me?
One of the easiest ways I break it down is just to start with the idea of how you want to help other people. So what is your drive behind this? Do you want to do this only for money? Do you want to do this because you really want to make a difference somewhere down the line? Really knowing kind of where you're coming from is the first step. And then from there, it's just listing out, what are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What are things that you're strong at, but you hate doing? What are things that you are terrible at doing, but that you enjoy? And that's kind of where you start to figure out what items you can truly start working on, or what you would be able to sell to other people as being able to say, I'm a professional and I can do this for you. It also gives you a really great idea right out of the gate on where you could start divvying tasks out to others too as well. So right away, when you're first starting, you might have to do everything yourself, but it's really impractical to think that you're going to be able to do that forever. So it really gives you a good starting point where if you start to get busy faster than you expected, or if it's just a little too much trying to start everything on your own, you already know what areas you need to reach out for help on. And then you can stay focused on the items that drive your sales and that make you a stronger business owner.
Got it. So what made you exactly want to be an entrepreneur? Like, what made you want to jump into this area of business?
Yeah, well, I've been working since I was a teenager. My first job was when I was, I was babysitting and feeding horses and doing random odd jobs. And then I got my first real job on paper at 15, and I've worked ever since. So I worked full time even as a teenager, worked full time through college. So I've been in the workforce a really long time. And I've just noticed a shift more and more in how people treat their employees and how employees view their workplace. And I feel like it's harder and harder to find a healthy balance for yourself. And even though I was working in jobs where I felt like I was helping and making connection with people, it was always really limited. And I missed that. I wasn't able to help people the way I really wanted to. So I took a step back, and I knew somewhere along the line that I wanted to start a company. And I think after so many years in the professional workforce, I just realized it was time to do it.
Got it. Got it. So, I mean, for what you do, what's the biggest difference do you find? Actually, let me rephrase this question. Starting a business, right? Anyone can start a business, but what is it that you offer, and that is slightly a little bit more different and unique in terms of what other people are offering? And what is it about your experience and your background that you feel like you can really help people shift their business ethics?
Definitely. So as I said, I come from a very working class background. I've worked very hard for everything I've had. I've had to overcome a lot of hurdles as well. So I understand what it's like needing to pay bills and keep a roof over your head, but also balance that inside voice that's telling you to do this, to go after these things. So I understand that for some people, I was one of those people, you can't just quit your job and jump into it 100%. right away. You have to start off with a plan. You have to wade into it. You have to set milestones that you can reach before you feel comfortable stepping away from, say, a secure income to go after these goals. So that's a big thing for me. I don't tell every single person, quit your job today and go after your business full time. It's all about realistic steps. I think for some people that's an option. And if it is, you should do it. But I also understand that other people, you've got to pay rent, you've got to keep the lights on and food on the table. So you have to have more of an exit plan for your current career to kind of get you into the next one. So that's big for me, realistic expectations that really anyone from any background or any situation can follow to make this a reality.
Got it. Got it. Yeah. I mean, absolutely. I definitely think, if you're going to start your own business, you're going to need to, I'm not trying to say be realistic, but you have to be somewhat practical, and not quit your day job, while you're working towards it, unless you have like, a good amount of money saved up that you can take those months or whatever years off to focus on your craft or your desired path. Right.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So for you, I want to get to know, I want to get to know a little bit more about like your struggles and how you overcame them. Can you share like one of your biggest struggles, through this journey, and how you overcame these struggles, and if there's something special in that, please share that as well, because I would really love to understand, like how someone like you are able to, and what I mean by someone like you, which is not me, and each individual is different in how they overcome stuff. So I like to understand how you have overcome your own personal struggles, struggles in business, and and how you got here today.
Yeah, definitely. So as I stated, I've worked a really long time. So through college, I know for a lot of people, college is fun. For me, it was just work and school. It was just something I had to get through to get to that next step. And so really for a large part of my life up until a few years ago, honestly, it was just trying to keep up, get bills paid, get a little bit ahead so I could actually do these things that I wanted to do. Then right before COVID, I started in healthcare, healthcare administration. So I was running large assisted living communities and I loved it. However, I kept seeing care and things go down in those communities, and it was harder to be a part of that. So I decided that I wanted to start my own home healthcare company. And right before COVID, I launched it. I went into it full time, and I was, trying to find caregivers and clients, and I was so excited. And I was about 3 months into it. I had my first client, and I had a couple caregivers who were interested in coming on board with me. And COVID happened. So I immediately panicked because I thought, I just launched this home health company and here's COVID. How am I going to do this? And it turns out I wasn't going to do it. It's really what it came down to. I was already helping people with office items and business tasks behind the scenes, and I wanted to do it for my own company. And I really just had to take a step back and say, I don't think I can do this right now. I had just worked on contracting with Medicaid, and there were so many approval processes now and so many things that you had to show to go into people's homes to be safe. And I didn't have the capital and I didn't have the resources to do it. And so I ultimately made the decision about 6 months after really starting that and putting all this work and time into it that I wasn't going to do it. And it was genuinely the hardest thing because I was so disappointed in myself. And I just thought, why did I do this in the first place? And it took a little bit of a step back for me. But in that same time, I was still working with other people and helping them develop logos and websites. And I was helping with bookkeeping and all these little items that I was charging people for, but that I was basically just kind of doing on the side. And that's when I thought, I really need to do this more and I need to offer this as a service instead of basically hanging on the idea that I had to stay in healthcare because that's what I had done. I had been doing business the whole time, everything, running an office and dealing with a staff, but yet I was so focused on it had to be in healthcare. So when I basically kind of removed that label from myself and I just said, hey, I really can help healthcare companies because I come from that background, but I can really help anyone as well with these items. It's really more about helping someone get through the harder things that they do not like doing or that they don't enjoy that I do. So I decided to basically relaunch that whole idea, but away from healthcare. So helping more with just business operations. And I think the hardest part of that was just overcoming the a little bit of that. Who am I to be helping people? I just had to close a business because I couldn't keep up with COVID and all of these changes. How am I going to tell other people how to run their business? But I think because of that, it also gives me, once again, a real world approach. I know that it's not going to work out every time. Sometimes you can go into it with the best intentions and have everything pretty much fight against you. And you have to decide at that point if it's worth moving forward or if you need to reevaluate and kind of not necessarily start over, but change your plan a little bit. And I think because of that, that's pretty much where I've gotten today. And it also gives me some real world advice that I can give to people on sometimes it just doesn't work out and you just have to move forward and try again. I think that's the biggest thing. Just don't give up. Just because it doesn't work doesn't mean that your idea is completely wrong or that you can't be an entrepreneur. It just means that you need to reevaluate what you're doing.
Yeah, sometimes the imposter syndrome can get in the way of what we really want to do,
Much.
Right, and as well as a locked in idea of a vision that you have for yourself, but doesn't necessarily mean it's going to come out that way. I mean, we all go through this, right? Whether our businesses are in what you do or if we're in the arts, my business is more in the arts, right? And for years, I struggled with this certain idea of what I wanted in my career, and what I learned from it, what I learned from this journey is it's better to have sort of like an overall objective idea, a feeling of what you want to accomplish in this area. But we have no control of the things that come to us, right? We have control. We have control over the things that we agree to or disagree to, right? But we don't have the control of what comes to us, and we just have to be okay with that.
Yeah, you've just got to roll with the punches. Like I said, for me, it was one of those moments of I was so down and I was being so hard on myself for it. And then it was one of those moments where I realized, wait a minute, I already have a bit of a business going. I already have people coming to me for help on certain things. Why am I fighting it so much? Just because it's not labeled as a healthcare thing. And I don't think that's just my mindset. I think that also comes from going through years of schooling and then being in the job world of you have to label yourself a certain way to apply for certain jobs and to be looked at by certain organizations. So you just kind of end up labeling yourself with that, and you just have to break out of that cycle.
Right. Yeah, that's the thing about old school way of teaching and learning, right? We go through school learning certain subjects that might benefit us or might not benefit us. I mean, I love physics, but I don't use physics every day, right?
Exactly.
I love geometry, but I hate algebra, right? But none of this stuff I'm using. I never even took a communication class, but I love communicating with people. But I guess what I'm trying to say is that there's a new way of learning things, and the new way of learning things is a lot more open. There's so much more that we can we can accomplish in our lives without just having to go down one path. Because as we know,
Yes.
like the Beatles song, the long and windy road, right?
Yes.
Right. I mean, there's
Great
so
song.
many. It's a great song. I love that song. There's so many ways you can go about this, as long as our vision is intact, right? In terms of what our overall vision is. Do you
Yes.
feel like what your vision, actually share with us like a little bit of your vision of your overall business and overall life, of like where you want to go?
Yeah. One of my biggest motivations for starting a business was not only to give myself more personal freedom and just more control over my life in general, but also I wanted to be able to get myself to a position where I could also give back to the community that created me. St. Louis is a very small city for a major city, and so you meet a lot of people and you stay in touch with a lot of people from your lifetime. So it was one of those situations where I wanted to be able to get to a certain point where I could then offer my services and offer my assistance to help other business owners here in St. Louis. There were a lot of small businesses here because of the affordability of the city. And in all honesty, I think it's a great place to start a business. But lately, I think more and more people, especially younger people, are kind of realizing hey, it's affordable here and there's good food and good nightlife and there's a lot of options here. And I think because of that, I've been seeing more and more of a drive of small businesses opening back up in St. Louis. For the longest time, the city was dying and the population was declining. And I think technically it still is, but for one of the first times in history, there's been a huge amount of people looking to move into the city and basically establish businesses and a life here. And so I really wanted to be able to offer something where people could come and use my services to build up not only themselves, but hopefully make St. Louis stronger as a community as well, and give more people chances to open businesses here.
Whenever I think of Missouri, I think of True Blood and swampy areas, vampires and werewolves and all that. It's pretty. That's what I think of when I think of Missouri. I've only passed by Missouri once during a road trip. And just I didn't really venture out. So like described as like St. Louis. Some people say, is it St. Louis or St. Louis?
St. Louis.
St. Louis.
I think St. Louis is more of a nickname.
Okay, because like I say St. Louis, but I want to make sure that I'm saying your city right. So St. Louis. So describe a little bit about what the population is like, and how the businesses, what kind of businesses are planted in St. Louis, and what type of struggles they're going through, especially through COVID, right? Because I can only imagine that a lot of the brick and mortars have shut down, temporarily for the past year, right?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So give us paint a little picture of the environment and, what people are doing there and how their spirits are.
Yeah, well, I will say one of the things that I love most about St. Louis, and one of the main reasons my husband and I moved back, we had moved around for a few years, is that not only is it an affordable city, but it's a very inclusive city. So there are people from so many backgrounds living in St. Louis City. And so we're in the heart of the city. When we came back, we said we want to live in the city. And we wanted to just live in communities where there were a lot of different people from different backgrounds. And that is one of the things that I think I love the most. You can drive down pretty much any street in St. Louis and there will be multiple different nationalities, living on one block, as well as businesses that relate to those nationalities. So when the Bosnian War happened, St. Louis received a lot of Bosnian refugees as well. So we have a very large Bosnian population, and the neighborhood that my husband and I actually live in was really one of the main neighborhoods where a lot of the Bosnian people came to live. And because of that, there are tons and tons of small businesses, because when they moved here, it was harder for them to get work and find jobs. So they started their own businesses and basically created their own market for these businesses. And I think that was one of the biggest things that I've always been so proud of St. Louis, is that the people are resourceful. People come from a lot of different backgrounds here, but I think some of the most impressive ones are people that start with nothing or close to nothing, and they have found a way to make their own market. And I think that's so crazy, because other people will fight to get into these markets and fight to get this exposure. And here people just go, I'm starting this business, and people will come or they won't. And it's crazy how much that works and how hard people will work to make it successful. So that's one of those things I really love about here, and why I also thought it would be a great place to start a business, because I know that people like to support others within the community. And so because of that, you do have this kind of tight-knit business community where you tend to meet a lot of the same people, but it also means that you have a really, really good chance to shine too. So if you do good work and you're very supportive and, you show up like you're supposed to, you have a good chance of finding success here in St. Louis. It just depends on how willing you are to make it happen.
Got it. You're talking about a diverse culture in St. Louis, and an extremely supportive community. How within the last year, there's been protests, right? They had the Black Lives Matter, George Floyd protest that happened last year, and currently there's the Asian hate thing protests going on. Mm-hmm. What can you share a little bit about the reaction and things that were happening in St. Louis during the George Floyd protest, and of course presently the Asian hate protests? What's happening there?
Yeah, no, I can say some of the protests. We did have quite a few after George Floyd, and overall, I think the support from the community was really good. It was very strong, and a lot of people, watching out for neighbors and friends and family, and just trying to be as supportive as they can be in their own way. We haven't seen a lot of protests yet for the Stop Asian, hate here. But we do have a really large Vietnamese population as well. I haven't witnessed anything here personally yet, and I really hope I don't. I hope with the inclusion of the city that we don't see a lot of that hate, but it does happen. It does happen. So far, like I said, I've seen a lot of businesses being very supportive. I know when there were times of protests and people were concerned about tempers flaring and there being issues, a lot of businesses in certain areas were boarding up their businesses. But when they boarded them up, they were having local artists come through and paint supportive murals, and standing with George Floyd, standing with all these different hashtags, things like that. And it was really, really nice to see, because it was great to see businesses, even though they were concerned about protecting themselves if they needed to, they were still participating and still being supportive, and they weren't trying to shut down streets or block people off. They were just saying, hey, if you come here, protest. If things get out of hand, we're prepared, but we stand with you and we want to give you a place to voice those opinions. And I really love that. Because unfortunately, at times, I don't think the rest of Missouri is as supportive of these causes and these ideas. And I think St. Louis kind of offers a place for people who are like-minded to kind of be and thrive and support those causes.
St. Louis sounds like a little bit more progressive than the rest of the state.
Definitely is. There's definitely a mentality. If you talk to people from Missouri, a lot of times they are aware of that. St. Louis and Kansas City and a couple other cities versus the rest of Missouri. So it's very much a mindset there on the cities. St. Louis and Kansas City especially are a little more progressive, I think, than the rest of Missouri.
Yeah, that's insane. So I'm from Toronto. So originally, I'm in LA now, but Toronto originally. So the atmosphere there is completely multicultural, at least where I grew up. Toronto is a pretty big city, and the diversity is is all kinds of people. And not until I came into the States where I felt the sort of subtlety of racism. It was interesting, whether it was one of those things where people would say something just a little snickering about the way you look, or who they would compare you to certain like martial artist icons, right? It was those remarks that I didn't understand growing up, and I'm at the point now that I'll put everything on the table before you can get to it. Right. And then I'll go, what else can you add to that? If you can't add to that, let's just be real human beings and just like, let's chat. Right.
Oh yeah.
That's because that's what it really comes down to. So, I mean,
definitely.
Where did you grow up from?
So I was going to say, so I actually grew up in rural Missouri. So weirdly enough, though, our town did have diversity, I would say, for a small town, but it was definitely a very small rural Missouri farm town. We lived in the boonies. I mean, my parents still live out in the boonies. So it's one of those things where growing up, I wasn't exposed to a lot of that. Only what I saw on news and things in that nature. But my dad was always very in tune with, national news and everything that was going on in the world. So I feel like I was always really exposed to that. So even though I grew up in a really rural town, I feel like I always kind of had progressive mindsets on things. And I think because of that, one of the biggest issues I had with Missouri in the first place was kind of the closed-mindedness of what I saw. But when I moved around and I kind of got out and explored, it was kind of what you touched on. I realized those issues were everywhere. They really were. They were just bigger or smaller scale, or just kind of more in your face or less in your face. And I think, once again, it was one of those things where I started to appreciate St. Louis in its own right because of the fact that it was this very progressive and open and supportive community based in a state where not everything around you would be that way, if that makes sense. So definitely I knew from a young age, I did not want to live in my small town, that I wanted to get out, live other places. And luckily I was able to do that. We moved around to a few different states and lived in other cities. And when we decided that we wanted to buy a home, actually, is when we came back to St. Louis. And like I said, we ended up buying in one of the most culturally diverse neighborhoods here in St. Louis, mainly because that was something that was important to us. We had lived in Chicago, we had lived in Denver, we had lived in these places with people from all walks of life. And it just really opens your eyes to a lot of these social issues and events that are happening. And I felt like that was incredibly important, especially if you wanted to be not only a business owner, but possibly a business leader one day in the community. I feel like you have to understand the issues within that community if you want to be a part of it. And if you aren't willing to learn those things, then it's going to be harder on you to be in business and support all communities around you, not just, ones that fit with what you want type of a thing.
Right. I mean, in order to be a business owner, in my opinion, at least, I believe, and this is something that I carried with from several of my mentors too, is that, it's necessary to be aware of what's happening in not just your own community, but also the world, because it trickles down to us, to everyone, essentially, right? What happens, around the world, eventually will happen to us, right? It'll affect us in some way, shape, or form, whether it's through maybe, the small community, right now that what's happening in Jerusalem, right? It's trickling down here. People are getting affected here, and if we're not aware of what's happening, then we can easily step into some nice mud pies, right? When you what age did you realize that things were not harmonious? I guess that's the best word I can use. Not harmonious. And what went through your mind when you realized this is not the place I want to live?
Yeah. Man, that's a good question. I think I've known that from a pretty young age. My dad, like I said, my mom and dad were always really good about traveling and showing me both sides of life, basically. You could be here, look at these gigantic homes they have with these mansions. But you could be here, it could be worse for you. And we kind of fell somewhere in the middle. My mom and dad both worked, but we definitely didn't have money by any means. There were a lot of times of just scraping by and just kind of doing what you had to get through. So I think one of those times where I really realized that there was an issue, if nothing else within our schools, was when from a young age, I always talked about college. I always wanted to go to school and get an education. And I was that annoying kid that was always like, can I get extra credit on this? Can I put this on a college application?
Oh, you were one of those, huh? Okay.
I was that kid, yes. And in a small school where a lot of the people really don't have plans after school, their plan is to stay in town and work in the, maybe inherit a farm or work in the local stores, work in the area. And all I knew was that I just didn't want to do that. I wanted to go somewhere. So in school, I was always asking for opportunities. And I remember, I think the biggest issue I had was sitting down one day to speak to a counselor, trying to go on a college visit or figure out if I could start taking courses at a community college or just something to kind of get myself ahead. And they wouldn't let me. They had no programs. I wasn't able to figure anything out with them myself. And it was one of those moments where I thought, wow, they really don't care about our education. They kind of already have us pre-categorized as we're going to either work here locally, or really the only option that our school gave to us was they talked to you a lot about going into the military, which there's nothing wrong with that, but it wasn't something that I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to go to college. And just getting them to deviate away from the conversation of having to go to the military to pay for college was one of the biggest warning signs I had. And I think I had that in middle school because once again, I was that kid. I was annoying. So I saw that and I just thought, how am I going to get myself out of here? How am I going to figure this stuff out for myself and make it happen? And luckily, I guess I was a very hard-headed person. So I kind of, instead of having that discourage me, which it did for a little bit, I ended up using that more as I'm going to prove you wrong and I'm going to do what I want anyways type of an attitude. And I carried that through high school, and it didn't always make me the most liked by the administration of our school. And, but you know what? I found those credits and I was able to do it myself and I made it work. I didn't live at home. My senior year of high school, I lived on my own in an apartment and drove to school and then would go to work and then figure out all these programs in between that I could use to try and better myself to get into college. And it was crazy. And I think about how many people must face that in schools across the country, not just small schools, though, large schools, inner city schools, just schools where they've pretty much wrote off their students and said, well, they're not going to do this, so we're just going to give them this information. I hate the idea that that has happened to people. And I know that I probably would have been more prepared to start my own company and do this a lot sooner if I had had a little more guidance and a little more kind of options out there presented to me. But since I had to go find them all myself, it took a little bit longer because I had to, make sure I got through college and then make sure I started to get a career and could, keep a roof over my head before I felt stable enough to go after what I'm doing now. So that was a big thing for me. And when I started this company was that I wanted to make sure that I could give back to people. So I offer trainings and I offer free trainings to people just because I want people to reach those goals. I want people who didn't have access to these things to not use that, I don't want to say as an excuse, but not use it as a reason for not doing these things, because it does make you want to give up. it's really hard to keep pushing against all of that and to keep doing it. You have to have really, really thick skin. And if you don't have it, you have to develop it. And it can be hard.
Right. I mean, you mentioned, inheriting a farm. I kind of figure, I mean, there's nothing wrong with inheriting a farm. I love farms, right? but if obviously to each their own, but if the general consensus is this is what you'll inherit, this is the education that we're going to give you, and education is limited in that area, then that's what you're going to get. It's essentially using a metaphor of, 80s or 90s programs while you're still using an 80s or 90s computer, right? You're still in that state where the whole world is up to, I don't know what you use, Android or iPhone. I'm an Apple user. So for me, thank you. So for me, we're in the iPhone 12 age, while somebody's still using the iPhone 4, right? Yes. So it's that limited scope of reality, and this is where it gets fun. Right. This is where the internet gets fun. We get to open up a whole new world, like a wider scope. We get to study whatever we want to study. Things are a lot more accessible to us. And we don't have to go down the same direction as our parents. Again, yes. Not saying that what our parents did was not good. It's just not in our own hearts at this generation, unless you really want to continue what your parents did. That's a whole nother story. When you decided all this, with your rebellious hard-headedness, when you decided to take on a whole new lifestyle and go in a whole different direction, what types of books did you study? Did you seek out mentors? How did you utilize the internet? How did you reprogram yourself? I guess that's what the question I'm asking.
Yeah, definitely. So in college, I would say I definitely sought out a lot of mentorship opportunities, fellowships, internships. I did a little bit of everything. And it's because I didn't have a lot of people in my life that I could look up to in that regard. I was the first one in my direct family to graduate from college. So
you're a pioneer.
Yeah. So I didn't have someone to go, hey, what did you do in this situation? I was just kind of left standing there to figure it out for myself. And at the same time, as I mentioned, I was working full time and my husband was working full time, and we were trying desperately to make ends meet. And it was tough. So I was working in an ER. So I'd go to school during the day. I'd drive an hour to my job in the ER. I'd work late, and then I'd come home, crash, get up super early in the morning to study and do my homework, and basically start it all over again. So I was also worked in some internships and fellowships where I would get to sit down with mentors and basically meet with leaders in the St. Louis region in business and get some ideas from them and just some guidance. And I think that was a big, big helping point for me. Not only just getting the chance to talk with them, but seeing how true business professionals interact in certain situations. I never knew how important it was to network and to know how to properly shake someone's hand. And they never would have taught me that in school, but those internships and those mentor programs are the ones that taught me those things. And as weird as it sounds, I think it's those items that I use more in everyday life than I do anything from school because it's real world. It's how to talk to someone, how to introduce them to yourself and your business, how to handle a scenario where you have plates of food and drinks and you're still trying to talk to people. It can be very clumsy for someone like me who came from a small town who never had big networking events. I didn't know how to network. I had to learn all of that. And so I definitely encourage anyone out there to take advantage of any mentorship programs that come their way. It will do you a huge justice. Even if it doesn't seem like it will. It'll pay off in the long run.
Right. Having a mentor is essential in anything. It's, that mentor could be like a coach, a confidant, a good friend, right? That you
Yeah,
can,
definitely.
so you can really spill your beans to, and they'll do their best to guide.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
I'm a huge fan of mentors. And without mentorship, again, going back to the limited thought process of, I can do it on my own. We can't do it on our own, to be honest with you. I mean, I'll be,
No.
that we all know that we can't do it on our own. And it's something that, I had to get over at a young age because there was a certain point in my life where I thought I could do it on my own. Just arrogance, pure arrogance, right? And stupidity too. But as soon as I realized that, if we tag team with people that have more experience, then we progress faster, which kind of goes back to the whole analogy of standing on the shoulders of giants, right? You learn
Yeah.
from these giants, and then it's the journey and the revolution continue the same way. Where the younger people that you foster will be able to stand on your shoulders and be able to progress faster. And as we accelerate through this,
Definitely.
yeah. What type of books did you
Oh yeah.
start reading?
So I was one of the first books I read that I kind of changed my mindset was Rich Dad Poor Dad.
I
So
love that book.
yeah,
Such a
it's a
great book.
great book. I love the idea of basically instead of looking at how flashy and how out there can you be on it, focus more on just living the life that you truly want. So for me, that didn't mean that I don't need a big house or a flashy car. I just want to be comfortable because growing up, I didn't have that level of comfortability. Everything was always, are we going to get through this month? Are we going to make it through next month? And for a lot of my life, it was that too. And so the biggest thing that I wanted was just stability. I wanted to know that I could live my life comfortably and go after these goals that I had for myself and be able to do it without just driving myself into the ground like I was before. So
Yeah.
that was a big one for me. As weird as it sounds, and I know I get a lot of laughs on this one, but do not underestimate the For Dummies books.
For Dummies books, right?
Those books are great if you're just getting started and you need practical tips on, social media. You have no idea where to start and you need some help. Snatch one of those books up. They're like $10 to $15. And they're almost like a resource guide in a book where, you can just flip to pages and they give you bullet points. And as silly as it is, I love those books. They are very helpful. And they were one of the, they helped me through a lot of little things that I had no clue on what I was doing when I was first starting.
Yeah, it's a quick read. It's like Wikipedia without going in depth, right? It's just a general guidelines to show you where to go, and then you can dive into deeper if you want to.
Yeah. It's a great just overall, hey, here's the key points on this topic if you need to make it happen right away. Of course, then I learned a lot in school. So those were just college textbooks. And honestly, I've learned a lot from online resources. So there are a lot of really great sites out there that you can go to for information. I love Investopedia. That's a really great one. It's not
That's
just
a good
focused. Yeah, it's not just business focused. It's a little bit of everything. I'd love there's so many blogs and resources out there that you can find this information online now. And it's really just compiling a list of items that help you through it. The only thing I say about when you find information online is just be aware of what the organization is that's putting that information out there.
Absolutely.
So, if they're selling, a social media platform and they're saying you have to have this, you might want to take that with a little grain of salt. But,
yeah.
There's a lot of blogs out there. I have a blog too. I don't have a ton out there, but there's more information coming. But it's, I try and put out information that's helpful and that will actually help the people who are reading it. And I'm not trying to sell you anything off of it. I'm just trying to get that information out there and be another resource for people. So once again, they have another resource to help them get going.
Yeah. Like Gary Vaynerchuk. You familiar with Gary V?
No, I don't think so.
Gary Vee is amazing. He's like the Robin Hood of the internet. He offers so much gold, so much information about social media, the way to market. He has so much free content on the internet, and he's been doing it for years.
Yeah.
And yeah, his whole thing is, he can charge you, but why? All this information should be free because it's an opportunity for people that want to start a business to be able to access all this information without spending thousands or millions, right, on education.
Yes.
Which there's nothing wrong with spending millions, right? Because if you or hundreds of thousands, I mean, if you go take a seminar with somebody, that's great. You can take or buy books, whatever suits your needs, right? But but Gary Vee is again, going back to Robin Hood. He's the Robin Hood of the internet. You should definitely check him out
I will,
on YouTube.
definitely.
Yeah, YouTube, Instagram. He's got. You'll learn his history. You can just if you have a subject matter, let's say marketing in 2021, Gary Vee, boom, new stuff will come up, right?
Oh, I guarantee I've read some of his stuff then. I just don't even know it.
Possibly. So going back to not the four agreements, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, going back to Rich Dad, Poor Dad, he has this thing called the four quadrants, right? So the four quadrants are broken into employee, self-employed, business, and investor. Where do you see yourself at currently, and where do you want to be?
That's a good question. I would say that I'm more in the self-employed category. So I am working on my own stuff. I'm building, but I'm still very much working. I still have to work every day at what I'm doing. I'm not on auto drive yet. I can't just sit back and go, okay, I've got my systems and my people in place. So I'm still very much at that growth phase for myself. I definitely would love to see myself in the future. I am moving towards more automated products as well as one-on-one services. So that's something I'm working on doing now because I would like to free up myself a little bit more of my time so I can do more trainings and actual connections with the community like I talked about. That's something I do now, but it is limited because I am a lot of time working on client projects. So that's something I'm looking forward to in the future is kind of automating myself a little more so I can take my business and then help other businesses in the area grow. I would love to invest in the future in other small businesses here in St. Louis if the opportunity ever arises. I think that would be really awesome. Not only, once again, is it a way to strengthen myself, but hopefully I can find a way, once again, to give back to the community and make St. Louis stronger in the meantime.
Are you in the position to? I mean, obviously, you're starting a business. You're running your own business right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's in the beginning stages. Saying that because there are four quadrants, are you in the position to invest with businesses, companies? Obviously not on a large scale, but at a comfortable scale. Is that somewhere that you will consider yourself to be, or something that you're working yourself up to?
I definitely think it's somewhere I am, but I haven't taken advantage of yet. So
what do you mean by that?
So I've definitely been considering more and more, my husband as well, the idea of investing in other local companies or just other companies that we feel is offering something that people want or that is a better resource to the current community. I was just reading about a fantastic program that was started. Unfortunately, it's not a small business, it's a government program, but I love the idea behind it. They partnered with a lot of local St. Louis companies, especially smaller ones, to provide part-time jobs to teenagers here in St. Louis. And the goal being that none of the jobs paid less than about $12 an hour. So the whole goal is to get these kids into jobs where they're actually learning things that they can take with them for the future. And they're getting paid a decent wage to do it. So they're not just giving up their whole summer without getting much pay or any pay to where they're just not coming back and participating. And I remember reading about that. And my first thought was, how do I participate? How do I get on board with that? And that's when I found out that it's a local government sponsored program. So you can make donations, or volunteer your time, but you can't really be a huge part of it. So that was one of those things where if that had been a small business, a local small business or startup that was doing that, I would have jumped on that. I wanted to be a part of that so bad, because not only is it a good idea and does it offer a great solution for temporary help through the summer for businesses, but it's a great opportunity for those kids to have access to jobs and really just learning what it's like to be in a job and be a professional. And to me, I thought that was so awesome. So I'm always looking for opportunities like that are arising. I've worked with some small businesses and some startups that I definitely have my eye on, that I'm very interested to see where they go and to see if I could possibly reconnect with them in the future and, make that a thing.
Yeah, no, that's such an amazing outlook. It's good to have, and I don't want to say a plan, but because I feel like sometimes plans always fall through, right? But I think when we have the overall objective in mind, the larger vision of who we want to help, how we want to provide for the community, things like that I feel like everything in between will come faster in a way to connect you to that goal. Right? Yes. Don't you think?
Yes, definitely. I think it's important to have an end goal, a pretty solid end goal. You just have to be flexible on what happens between now and that end goal. Because yes, plans change and things go haywire. But if you have your eyes set on your end goal, you can make it happen. You just have to be flexible as things basically pop up in life. It's life. Things happen. You can't control it all the time. So you have to be ready to roll with the punches and not let it stop you. You can't let those things that go wrong, those negative things that happen, just stop you dead in your tracks. Because if so, you're always going to be restarting completely from scratch, and you're never really going to get to where you need to be. You kind of have to keep that momentum going and just roll with the punches and, kind of turn and steer that idea into a new direction if need be.
Sarah, that almost sounded like your closing words, which is what I was going to ask. What's one piece of advice that you would give to the listeners about entrepreneurship, business, life, etc.?
Yeah, definitely. Start now in any way that you can, whether it's just reading, researching, getting some of the paperwork done, whatever it may be. Start with the little things now, get those ideas on paper, and just don't give up. Keep going, keep pushing. There are going to be a lot of people in your life. And usually, I hate to say it, but usually it's a lot of people close to you who will be your biggest naysayers, whether that comes from a good place or a bad place. You'll be surprised at how many people you'll tell, and they'll kind of look at you a little crazy, like, okay, we'll see if this happens. But instead of using that as a way to kind of beat down your spirits, have it motivate you. Use that as, I can't wait to one day sit here and talk to this person about this big business that I've created, not to show off, but just as a way to prove to yourself that, hey, I can do this. And just, you have to get out of your own way. It's hard. It's very hard. You're going to have bad days. I still have bad days all the time, but the good days make up for those bad days. Infinitely.
That's right. And, for the naysayers, it's because when there's something new, they have no idea what it looks like yet. Right. Yes. And so it's really our mission to make that happen so that they can see what was in our head, essentially.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Right? This is what my thought was. It's something that can be done. And I think sometimes those people, it does come from a place of love. It might be someone who loves you and cares about you and does not want to see you struggle and stress out over these things. But once again, the good days and the good things that come from it, when you close your first sale and when you get your first really good customer review, it makes up for all of those bad days, because it confirms all of that hard work that you've put in.
Definitely. I mean, it's like George Lucas coming out with the first Star Wars. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the history of that, but
yes, I am.
He had, okay. So, I mean, I guess I guess we're both like sci-fi nerds, so which is
definitely
awesome. Okay. So the story, and he had such a hard time with coming, into fruition with his vision, but at the end, look how like much of an impact it made globally, right?
Yeah.
And so that's where you have to start off and just keep going, like you were saying. Sarah, are there social media links, contacts, Facebook, Instagram pages that if somebody wanted to reach out to you and talk to you, ask for mentorship, are there any links or contacts that they can reach out to you on?
Definitely. Yeah. So I just launched my own podcast. It's brand new, but it's called the Virtual Desk Roundtable Podcast. So we'll have some more episodes coming soon with some awesome guests that we have lined up. I also have the blog out there, so you can visit my website at virtualdeskva.com. That has the blog, the podcast information, as well as services and a lot of freebies out there. I actually have a 90-day goal and step planner out there for free on my website. I put that out there because I like to put my money where my mouth is. And I think that's a very, very important item to have to roadmap your business ideas. So that's out there for free. It's a free download. It'll just help you walk you through your ideas and kind of, once again, get those thoughts onto paper so you know exactly how to start taking steps from there.
Excellent. I love that. Sarah, thank you so much for your time, your wisdom, your knowledge, your excitement for entrepreneurship, because it's a whole another level, a whole nother generation.
Oh, well, thank you so much for having me. It's been awesome talking with you today.
Awesome. I love it. Cool. I'll talk to you real soon. Again, thank you. This has been so good.
Awesome. Well, I'll talk with you soon.
Okay. Peace out. Thank you.
Bye.